There are many myths and illusions about emotions. Things like, I cannot control my emotions, I cannot control my anger, or the belief that you should always listen to your heart and not your head. Perhaps you believe that you should or shouldn't feel a certain way, that negative emotions are bad for you. Or perhaps you believe that venting will help you make you feel better, that every single emotion needs to be expressed. If you believe any of that, I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. These are just myths about feelings, myths about emotions that people have, myths that can destroy your relationships, your well-being, and your self-esteem. Hi, I'm Katya. I'm a psychologist and psychotherapist from Slovenia, and I'm here to help you skyrocket your self-esteem. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any of my new videos. Let's look at myth number 1. Emotions just happen. No, they don't. You feel an emotion when something happens that you consider important. Some emotions last longer than others. In a recent study, researchers looked at 27 different emotions and discovered the average amount of time each emotion tends to last. Sadness is the longest lasting emotions of all. On average, it lasts 120 hours. Hatred is the second most enduring emotion, followed by joy, which lasts on average 35 hours. Guilt lingers longer than shame, and fear passes fairly quickly compared to anxiety, which usually lasts longer. The shortest emotions are shame, surprise, fear, disgust, irritation, boredom, and relief. We often unconsciously prolong emotions, especially if the event is very important to us and we start ruminating and overthinking it. If you often catch yourself overthinking and ruminating, check out this video. The second myth is, I cannot control my emotions. Emotions do not equal actions. This is important to remember. We often believe that strong emotions will lead us into destructive and impulsive behaviors. Many people believe, for example, I cannot control my anger. But just because you feel angry doesn't mean you'll start physically hurting others. The way you act when you're angry is a pattern of behavior that you practiced over time and internalized. And some people come to realize that anger can be an effective way of intimidating others. So they get angry in order to get others to do what they want. So they allow themselves to get really angry or to become explosive and aggressive in order to get what they want. So it's a learned behavior. You may not choose your emotions, but you choose and decide on your actions. Another common myth is, I shouldn't feel this way, or I should feel a certain way, or I should feel the way that everybody else is feeling in this situation. There is no right or wrong way to feel. It's normal for different people to have different emotional reactions. Let's look at grieving, for example. Not all grieve in the same way when they lose someone they love. Some feel deep sadness and cry all the time. Some feel unspeakable sadness, yet they don't cry. Some feel angry at the person for having deserted them. Some feel hopeless. Some feel numb, and so on. It's also natural to have mixed feelings about something. When you're grieving, you can be sad and angry at the same time. So there is no right way to feel. Different people have different emotional responses. Another illusion about emotions is that positive emotions are good while negative emotions are bad. All emotions are natural and all can serve a purpose. There are no bad emotions. Every emotion has a potential to be useful to you. For example, sadness helps you let go. Anger reminds you of your values and boundaries. It helps you say no and protect yourself and your self-esteem. Fear, on the other hand, reminds you of the dangers, and it helps you to take precaution to keep yourself and your loved ones safe. Of course, that doesn't mean that all emotions are always healthy and good for you. If, for example, you feel guilty for weeks after being in a bad mood when you were hanging out with your friends, that's not healthy. So Every emotion has a potential to be healthy and useful to you, or be unhealthy and hurt you. If you believe that you should always be positive, that you should only feel positive emotions, check out this video. Another very popular myth about emotions is the belief that you should listen to your heart and not your head. First, let me tell you something. All your emotions are formed in your head, in your mind, your brain, not your heart. Of course, you can feel different emotions in different parts of your body. For example, you can feel anxiety in your chest, or perhaps you feel guilt on your shoulders, or you feel anger in your stomach or in your head, and so on. So you can feel emotions in different parts of your body, but all emotions are formed in your brain, in your mind. You may not realize, but you cannot feel emotions without first having thoughts in your mind. Let me explain what I mean. Let's say a woman is alone in her home when she hears a sound, and she thinks, "Oh my God, somebody broke into my home." How will she feel? She will probably feel fear. She might call the police, lock herself in her bedroom, or she might grab something to defend herself with. Now, let's look at another possibility. So, same as before, the woman is alone in her home when she hears a sound. Only this time she thinks, "Oh, it's probably my husband coming home." How will she feel? Assuming they have a strong marriage, she'll probably feel happy that he's home. She might feel love as well. How will she act? She will probably come to him to greet him. Here's another possibility. So the situation is the same as before, only this time she thinks, it's probably the neighbor. I bet he's drunk again. I just don't want to deal with him passing out in the hallway again. How will she feel in this case? Most likely she'll feel frustration and anger. How will she act? She might leave the whole thing alone, or she might go to the door to give her neighbor a piece of her mind. So you see, the situation is exactly the same in all cases, but her emotions and her actions later on are totally different. So how come her emotions are so different, even though the situation remains exactly the same? Because of her thoughts. You see, we usually don't realize it because it's all happening so fast, but our emotional responses aren't actually based on the situation that's happening, but on our explanation of the situation. It's our thoughts about the situation that matters. It's our thoughts that shape our emotional response. So you cannot really choose between your heart and your head, because whenever you feel anything, your mind, your head, was key to forming those emotions. So don't think you have to choose between your emotions and your reason. Listen to both. Both are crucial for making accurate assessment of a situation. The best decisions are those that are based on both emotions as well as reason, as well as your thoughts, your mind. The next myth is, I can't help how I feel. You can change how you feel. Of course, that doesn't mean that you force yourself into feeling something, but you can work on changing your mood. You can also look at different explanations for the situation that you're in. As we've discovered through the previous example with the woman who hears a sound, your emotions are based on your explanation of the situation, on the way how you view the situation. So you can consciously ask yourself, what are some other possible explanations? Let's look at a practical example. Let's say that a colleague of yours seems withdrawn this morning. You tried chit-chatting with him and he sort of blew you off. You might think, he has a problem with me, he doesn't like me anymore. And as a result, you feel unworthy and unappreciated. Now think, what are some other possible explanations? For example, perhaps he's stressed because he has a lot of work. Perhaps he didn't even realize that you were trying to chit-chat. Perhaps he has social anxiety. Perhaps he had a fight with his girlfriend and is still thinking about it and is in a bad mood. Perhaps he didn't get enough sleep and feels off, and so on. So there are many other explanations that will make you feel different emotions. So my point is, you can change how you feel. Simply look at the situation and ask yourself, what are some other possible explanations? Another very common myth that most people don't even realize that they believe in is, if I feel something, then it must be true. This is a myth that I often come across with, especially when working with clients with low self-esteem. They often believe that if they feel shame and if they feel like they're not good enough, then that must mean it's true, that they are in fact not good enough, or that they are worthless. Just because you feel something doesn't make it true. Remember, your emotions are based on your thoughts, not on facts. Another very common myth is the belief that other people can make me feel certain emotions. Your partner can't make you mad, and your boss can't make you feel insecure. No one can make you feel anything. Of course, others can influence how you feel, but they cannot control how you feel. Remember, you are in charge of the way you think, feel, and act. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Another myth is that you shouldn't show your feelings, that you should hide them. Not true. Of course, there is a time and a place to show your feelings. You probably don't want to start crying to your boss or start sharing your insecurities to a complete stranger, other than a psychotherapist. But that doesn't mean that you have to hide your feelings from everybody. Another common myth is that expressing your emotions is a sign of weakness. Not true at all. Expressing your emotions is a sign of strength and courage. There is a difference between being weak and allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable takes real courage and it shows real strength. This brings us to our final myth about emotions that I have for today, which is every emotion needs to be expressed. Venting will make me feel better. Knowing yourself, knowing your emotions, and knowing how to regulate them doesn't mean that you have to express every single emotion you have. Venting about bad traffic or your mother-in-law won't make you feel better. Research shows that venting does the exact opposite. Venting only makes you feel even worse. The same goes for punching a bag. It only makes you feel more angry. So instead of venting, acknowledge your emotions, name them, and then let them be and move on. So here it is, the most common myths about emotions. So now you know that emotions don't just happen. You know that they are the result of the way you see a certain situation, not the situation itself. You know that emotions don't equal action and that you can change how you feel. You know that just because you feel something doesn't mean that thing is in fact true. You know that venting will actually make you feel worse, and you know that expressing your emotions can be a sign of real courage and strength. So now it's your turn. Let me know which emotion do you struggle with the most. Are you someone who expresses emotions easily? Do you often find that emotions start to overwhelm you, or do you keep your emotions bottled up? Let me know in the comments below. I'll also be happy to answer any questions you might have. Before you go, make sure to subscribe so that YouTube will let you know when I post a new video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me through this video. I hope to see you soon.